Hello, everybody. It is Friday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined by Paul Zeise, our Post-Gazette sports columnist, for today's episode of the North Shore Drive podcast. We're going to be talking Steelers backup QBs, specifically the popularity of Will Howard, the Steelers' rookie sixth-round pick, among the fans specifically, and then we're going to later get into a look around the division. What's going on with the Bengals, Browns, and Ravens, and how does that impact the Steelers' future here? Before we get started, we want to remind you that this show is presented by FanDuel. We also want to thank Edgar, Snyder, and Associates. When you've been hurt on the job, who decides when you're better? Who decides when your treatment is over? Who decides when your benefits are over? The answer might surprise you. Insurance company doctors do. How does that make you feel? If the answer is not great, call Edgar, Snyder, and Associates today at 1-800-94-EDGAR. They'll fight for the work comp rights you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Paul, it's been a big week for Steelers fans who love Will Howard on social media. I've seen the push to get him started on X, Our own comment section, specifically really during the post show on Sunday, was talking about Will Howard a lot and wanting to see him instead of Mason Rudolph. Jerry Dulac was asked about Will Howard 4 times in his chat. I'm not going to say it's the majority of Steelers fans by any means. I think it's a small but very loud segment wants to see this guy get an opportunity. He's a 6th-round pick, and he's a rookie. Are you shocked at the level of support that he's been getting from people out there?
I am not, because we are – it's not just us, believe me, everywhere. It seems people are enamored with backup quarterbacks no matter where you go. It feels like that all the time. It feels like people are always so they've got these flights of fantasy of what this backup quarterback is going to be. In Will Howard's case, I just don't understand – what it is about him that has so many people really believing that he would be ready to play. I mean, forget about, what he did at Ohio State or whatever. He's missed how much time this year, and he's a rookie. Do you really believe that he'd be ready to play and ready to lead the Steelers on Sunday? I mean, if you do, I can't help you. But it's a phenomenon in some ways where, as long as the guy's the backup, people are always enamored with him, and they always believe, especially if the starter struggles or if the starter is somebody that they don't like, they always believe that this guy is going to be better. I mean, I don't know if Will Howard will ever be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't know that, and I don't know that how anyone else could. I think he'll be a guy that will have a couple of years here with the Steelers, and they'll give him an opportunity, and, maybe, who knows, a year or two down the road, they let go of Mason Rudolph and Will Howard becomes their backup. But I think that people have convinced themselves that this guy is a whole lot better, or at least a whole lot better and NFL ready than he actually is.
Yeah, I'm at least willing to entertain the idea of, this guy deserves a chance at some point. I just don't believe that time is now, especially if Aaron Rodgers is healthy. He's a guy with 20 years in the NFL versus a guy with one. Will Howard was active for 1 game this past week amid his injury. He basically has not practiced very much during this entire duration. So is it funny to you that we simultaneously have camps that love Mason Rudolph? You got these huge Mason Rudolph fans who wanted him over Aaron Rodgers this whole time. And we have this segment of Will Howard fans who think Mason Rudolph stinks and Will Howard should be the guy over Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about this. What was it, this week? I think maybe I wrote about this. But has there ever been a player who has so completely changed the narrative of his career more than Mason Rudolph in your mind? I mean, seriously, 2 or 3 years ago, they wanted to run the guy out of town. And then when they had Kenny Pickett and Mason and Mitch Trubisky, it was like, oh, yeah. They just, it was a charity case. They signed Mason Rudolph. Then all of a sudden he wins 3 games for them. And now he's like almost like a fan favorite, and people, are going overboard the other way. It's absolutely incredible. Now, that being said, I can at least hear the argument and actually make the argument that they should play Mason Rudolph this week. That's different. in my mind, than anyone suggesting Will Howard.
The Mason Rudolph thing has always been interesting because do you remember that tie they had against the Lions? I think it was the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career, and
Yes.
that was like the low point of Mason Rudolph, and I feel like that moment has been memory hold. And I wasn't ready to judge him by that game alone, like a lot of the fan base was, but it is very funny to me that people don't bring up that game, even though that was like there was so much angst about that tie. Even though it ended up not mattering at all.
And the thing about it is that it was really one of the times where I thought it was very unfair to judge Mason Rudolph by that game, considering it was the conditions of that game were absolutely horrible. And the other thing is, not to sound like the current fans in Cleveland, but Ben Roethlisberger had taken all the reps that week, and it wasn't until Saturday that he was declared out for the game. I think he might have tested positive, I think is back when that is actually when that happened or whatever. And so Rudolph got thrown into a game where he didn't practice all week, and he was playing in like the worst conditions you could possibly play. And every time I tried to bring that up, I was shouted down because at that point, the narrative had become, he's horrible. And so he'll never be an NFL quarterback, and that's what people went with.
Well, I think there was still anger about them having drafted him. It was led by Ben Roethlisberger, if you remember the radio interviews, and that was what basically ended him being on the radio was talking about his backup quarterback the way that he did. And I feel like that kind of poisoned the well for a lot of people. But now that you haven't had that influence so much in public, it seems that, people are willing to give him a chance. And to be fair, that end of the 2023 season maybe is as good as the Steelers offense has looked consistently in a long time, wasn't it, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing about it, Adam, is Mason has done a really good job, I think, of really progressing as a quarterback. And, one of the problems he had early on, and, a lot of young quarterbacks do, but one of the problems he had early on, if you remember, he was always really like mechanical, playing almost like scared and real rigid. But over the course of, in those 3 games when he played, he came in, it was almost like there was no pressure on him, and he played loose and he played like without fear. And I know all of a sudden he built on that, I think. And I think we saw a little bit of that the other day. I feel like when he came into the game, he did add a little bit of energy to the Steelers offense and got them a little bit, maybe a little bit of enthusiasm or whatever. But also I think he brings a skill set that is different than Aaron Rodgers. And so I think that one of the things that's happened is he's gotten better. Like we always talk about these teams and how they didn't develop a player, they didn't develop this guy. I don't know if it's all 100% the Steelers, but I do think that Mason Rudolph, when you watched him play early in his career, played scared, he played tentative, he played rigid, he played almost like a robot, so to speak. And, it showed in his results. And now, he goes out there and he plays without fear because, honestly, if you think about it, he really doesn't have much to lose. And, back then he still thought he was going to try and be a starter. And he thought he was, having to carry the load and all that other stuff. And he was going to be the heir apparent to Ben. I mean, now he's a backup, and when he comes in, he gets his opportunity. Great. And he does the best he can do to make it work.
Steelers are 2.5-point underdogs this week, according to our friends at FanDuel. They're facing the Bears, whoever the quarterback is, but that seems to be the consensus is 2.5-point underdogs. Paul, just to bring the conversation full circle, I don't want to come across as sounding like I'm bashing Will Howard. I think it's entirely possible that he could do exactly what you said about Mason Rudolph, making that improvement and becoming a better NFL quarterback. We've seen these guys in their late 20s, early 30s, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, all of these guys kind of finding ways to blossom. I guess, the question is, could Mason Rudolph be the next guy in that lineage with some of these other older quarterbacks or guys entering maybe their primes? Could Mason Rudolph be that guy? And what is your long-term view of Will Howard? Could he take that career arc? Even if we agree it's not smart to start a 6th-round rookie quarterback right now, do you see that level of upside potentially with him?
I mean, with Will Howard, again, I have to see a whole lot more from him. I know that there are people that see one pass or one play and they think, that I would have to see a whole lot more from him. I'm not convinced he's going to be, some great quarterback in the NFL. But again, if he just progresses and he gets better and, when he has some opportunities to play, he shows that he can actually handle those opportunities. I mean, it could happen for him down the road. But, I mean, there are people that are talking as if, like, the Steelers could push Aaron Rodgers out the door tomorrow and next year Will Howard's ready to be the starter. I'd be very careful with that. I don't know that that's where we're at. I think he can be a guy who gets better, but he's got some physical shortcomings that, are concerning if you're looking for an NFL quarterback. And I think the other part of it is I don't know that he's played enough NFL football or practiced enough NFL football for anybody really to know how good he can be.
Yeah, no preseason games. We didn't even get a look then. So, look, I liked him at Ohio State. I think he did a great job. There's guys who get drafted in the 6th round who don't have the resume that he had in college, but there was a reason he went to Kansas State first, and there was a reason that he succeeded at a place that had great receivers. It was a great team around him. If you put him on a different team, what are the results there? So we'll see how Will Howard continues to develop. Paul, we're going to get into some AFC North division talk on the other side of this break. Before we do, we want to thank Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci, Pittsburgh's mesothelioma and asbestos attorneys, standing up for victims of mesothelioma and asbestos cancers with over 85 years of experience. Visit them online at sdklaw.com. We also want to thank Olivia Numismatic Rarities in Shadyside. Gold prices are through the roof, and there's never been a better time to cash in. At Olivia Numismatic Rarities in Shadyside, you can turn your unwanted gold into instant cash safely, securely, and with full transparency. Bring your old jewelry, coins, or bullion and get top dollar from Pittsburgh's most trusted gold buyer. Visit onrcoins.com or stop by 5833 Ellsworth Avenue today. We'll be right back. Second segment here on the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Adam Bittner here with Paul Zeise. We're talking about the AFC North division, what's going on with the Steelers' biggest rivals. Paul, pivoting off the previous conversation, how interested are you to see Shadur Sanders make his long-awaited debut? Been an endless talking point on ESPN. Steelers fans had to talk about Shadur Sanders deep into the NFL draft a year ago. What are you looking for in that game from him?
Well, here's the thing, Adam. I would be really interested in watching it and seeing it if I could do it without the sound on, and I could have, the ability, which I do, I guess I do, to not be on social media for at least 2 days after it. I don't know about you, but this is going to be the most obnoxious day of social media there probably has been in a long, long time, just because the discussion is so stupid at this point and so polarizing at this point. I do think the kid has talent, and I think that, there's going to be a little bit of excitement just to see what he can do. But I can tell you right now, my take on it is this. He's a young quarterback making his first career start with very limited time. Right? If he struggles, it doesn't mean that, he's necessarily going to never be a good quarterback. I expect him to have times when he looks like he knows what he's doing and other times when he's going to struggle in this game, And so I think people just need to let the kid write his story, whatever that's going to be. But, of course, that's not, what's going to happen here. The first incompletion he throws, it's going to be a way overreaction. The first good pass he threw, he threw a good he had a 20-yard pass or something the other day, and people went crazy, and I've never seen Dylan Gabriel make that throw. I think that if I could watch the game with the sound down and without anybody else in my ear, I probably would enjoy watching him just to see what he can do, because I am interested in him. I mean, I think, if you watched him at Colorado, he was a really good player. I think what you're seeing this year with Colorado is just how good he was. I mean, if you want to talk about a program and a team that was propped up by two guys, you had him and the kid that plays for Jacksonville, Travis Hunter. Those two guys obviously were incredibly good at winning games that a roster that hasn't been all that impressive. They were able to win 9 games last year. I want to see him play. I mean, I'm a Deion Sanders fan. I mean, obviously, I'm a Florida State guy. I mean, Deion, if I had to list my top 3 athletes of all time, guys that, my favorite, not best, but my favorite. I mean, it's a very simple, Deion, right? Charlie Ward, obviously. Those are 2, and probably my third one would be Steve McNair. I mean, those are my 3 probably all-time favorite athletes. So, I mean, I'm a fan of Deion Sanders, and you know what? I kind of think the Coach Prime thing is kind of funny, and I also think that Shedeur, to me, is a guy who's got talent, and he's an exciting player. Adam, obviously, if he plays well or he plays reasonably well, it gives Cleveland a little bit of spice. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Steelers get to play them in a couple of weeks or something, don't they? They're going to play them again. So that would add some intrigue or interest to the game.
You think there will be some immediate regret from Steelers Nation? We'll have the Mason Rudolph camp, we'll have the Will Howard camp, and then the quickly developing, we should have drafted Shadur Sanders camp. Is that going to happen if he plays well?
Yes, absolutely. That's going to be what's funny. It'll be interesting to see because, one of the things that was funny this week was there are a number of people that are going with the whole Shadur Sanders. The Raiders passed on him, 5 or 6 times, whatever it was, passed on him 5 times. He hasn't forgotten. I'm thinking to myself, every team passed on him 5 times. So if that's going to be his motivation every single week, it's going to be his motivation every single week. The Steelers, I'm going to tell you, here would be like Steeler meltdown would be if he plays and he beats the Steelers. That would be where you would see the Steeler fan meltdown. We should have drafted this guy and all the other stuff for sure.
Paul, let's talk a little bit about the Bengals. How far away is that team the Steelers saw last week from being good? Are there struggles just about these injuries to Joe Burrow, Trey Hendrickson, or are they just a bad team right now?
Their offensive line is bad. Let's start there. And I don't believe you can win if you have a horrible offensive line. I know people will point to Ben Roethlisberger's when they beat the Cardinals. That's an exception. That line wasn't very good, but Ben Roethlisberger was magical, and more importantly, the defense was unbelievable. That defense is one of the best defenses of all time, and so it was easy. Ben only had to make a few plays to score enough points to win. I think that if you look at the Bengals, their offensive line is terrible. I think their running backs are very average. I think that their defense is atrocious. And even if you add Trey Hendrickson to that defense, their back guys, their linebackers, their back guys can't tackle. They are so bad. And they're not good at coverage, and they're not good at tackling, and I'm not sure if they're good at anything on defense. So it's not a good team. And my thing with Joe Burrow is, okay, we're going to bring Joe Burrow back to put him behind an awful offensive line that he's gotten brutalized behind for the last 2 or 3 years. For what? A season that's lost? If they beat the Steelers the other day, I might listen to the argument that, well, they're still involved in the playoff hunt or whatever, but they're not. They're done. You can put a fork in them. And so to me, if you bring back Joe Burrow, okay, that means you're going to score, 40 points instead of 35 that you're scoring with Joe Flacco or whatever. It's a bad football team. And, they to me, they need to fire the coach because I've never been high on him. I know he got him to the Super Bowl one year, but I just the things, some of the decisions he makes on game day, he's always got that stupid look on his face. I have no idea how you can have that team and that quarterback and not put together an offensive line to protect them, though. So I'd start with getting rid of the coach and the entire staff. I'd get rid of the front office, too, because I think that they have done a poor job of really putting together a roster that's good. And I would in no chance I would put Joe Burrow out there on the field this year again. I wouldn't. I'd tell him, listen, we're going to let you heal up. You're a $300 million investment. We'll let Joe Flacco take a beating for the last 5 or 6 games.
Let's finish up this segment with the Ravens, Paul. We keep talking about them like they're definitely coming for the Steelers in the standings, but they really struggled in that win against the Browns. Lamar Jackson was not good. I think his passer rating was under 50. Are we clinging too hard to the idea of what they were last season, what they did to the Steelers in the playoffs, or are they going to figure it out at the right time? Because I think we kept saying that about the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs went out and lost, dropped to their 5th game. Now it's questionable whether they're going to make the playoffs. They're probably going to have to win every game and still get some help. Just the way the standings are shaking out, unless the Steelers also collapse. But that's, I guess, a different conversation. But how do you view the Ravens? Have we just built them up on what they were at the end of last season, and then maybe they're just not that team?
Absolutely. I think a couple things I've seen from the Ravens. Number one, Lamar Jackson. I think he's injured, Adam. I think he's still a little bit banged up. I think his knee or whatever it is, because if you watch that game against the Browns, he was not taking off and running. And you know what? When he wasn't, he didn't have that burst where he's like super fast and, faster than everybody on the field. I should say the Browns have a good defense, so that's a part of it. But he doesn't look great. Their offensive line has taken some bad injuries, and it's pretty clear they're not very good. And because they're not very good, they can't run the ball like they want to with Derrick Henry. Henry still has, once or twice he'll pop one free just because he's that good. But for the most part, if you watch that game, they couldn't really run the ball against the Browns. Most of Henry's yards came on two runs. They have what I would call an offense, and we all overrated them in some ways, or at least when we talked about them in the beginning of the season, we talked about them basically why? Because we said they had this dynamic offense, right? This dynamic playmaker at quarterback, this dynamic offense that was going to outscore if they needed to, and all that other good stuff. I'll tell you this much right now. I think there's a couple things. Number one, I don't think Lamar Jackson is 100%. Number two, the offensive line is not good because they've had to patch it together. They've had injuries, and a couple of guys they're playing are not good enough. I think as a result of that, they're frustrated. You can see, they had some blow-ups on the sidelines the other day. I still am not sure. I think they're probably at a place where we talk about the Steelers at times with Mike Tomlin. I think that team is probably at a place where they need a new voice. And they need a new, just a new energy from their coaching staff. And the defense has gotten better than they were at the beginning of the year. So, that'll help them stay in games. But I don't know that the defense is great yet. It's better, and, they're making plays. But it's not the defense that we're used to from the Ravens in some ways. Honestly, I've watched the Ravens now a few times, over the last few weeks, and if I'm right about Lamar Jackson, I'm going to be honest with you. I really, really think that the Steelers are going to have a chance to beat them, not just once but twice, because I think that front seven will get after Lamar Jackson, and you know what? If you take away that element where he's making 30 and 40-yard runs and 20-yard runs and, taking the ball and tucking it and going, all the other stuff. You take that away from Lamar Jackson, he's a very ordinary player.
Yeah, I think, listen, I'm not ruling the Ravens out of winning the division, but I think you can only underwhelm for half a season before we have to say, it's probably going to be a dogfight till the very end with the Steelers and the Ravens, and maybe the Ravens will win out if the Steelers are flawed in their own ways, as we talk about frequently, but I have lost the sense of inevitability with the Ravens that I did, even when the Steelers had a four-game lead at one point, or 3-game lead. I don't think it's inevitable. So we will see how that plays out. Paul, thank you for joining me this week. Everyone else, if you're just joining us for the first time, please consider subscribing to our channel. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. And please consider checking out our written work over at post-gazette.com. Subscriptions always help us out there as well. We will chat again next week, and you'll see Paul and I on the post-game show Sunday after Steelers-Bears.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.